Boys Without Names, First Chapter Friday read aloud video with the word nerd Amanda Zieba and author interview with Kashmira Chef. Today, as you listen, play along. Watch for the story quote that will appear on screen. Write it down, word by word, and then follow the instructions given to you by your teacher. Make sure you stay all the way to the end to see if you got it correctly. Real quick before we get reading, I want to give a shout out to Mrs. Hurtner's 7th grade students at Holy Trinity. They're listening all the way over in Ottawa, Ontario, Canada. Thanks so much for being here today, you guys. I hope you enjoy this First Chapter Friday video. Hi, my name is Amanda Zieba. Welcome to my channel, Learning with the Word Nerd, and another First Chapter Friday video. This week, I'm going to be reading to you from Boys Without Names by Kashmira Chef, and then, because we're super lucky, we're going to get a chance to interview the author. But before I get into all that goodness, let me tell you what this book is about. For 11-year-old Gopal and his family, life in their rural Indian village is over. We stay, we starve, his Baba has warned. With the darkness of night as cover, they flee to the big city of Mumbai in hopes of finding work and a brighter future. Gopal is eager to help support his struggling family until school starts, so when a stranger approaches him with the promise of a factory job, he jumps at the offer. But Gopal has been deceived. There is no factory, just a small, stuffy sweatshop where he and 5 other boys are forced to make beaded frames for no money and little food. The boys are forbidden to talk or even call one another by their real names. In this atmosphere of distrust and isolation, locked in a rundown building in an unknown part of the city, Gopal despairs of ever seeing his family again. But late one night, when Gopal decides to share kahanis, or stories, he realizes that storytelling might be the boys' key to holding on to their sense of self and their hope for any kind of future. If he can make them feel more like brothers than enemies, their lives will be more bearable in the shop, and they might even find a way to escape. I love this story, and in fact, one of my most favorite quotes from any book ever came from this book, and as you're listening to the story today, I'm going to show it to you one word at a time for today's mystery quote. So definitely stay tuned to that and stick around to the end so you can hear what Kashmira has to say about writing the story and all sorts of other good things. Let's dig in. Chapter 1, Boys Without Names. Oh, I forgot. I met her. Well, I mean, I didn't forget I met her, but I forgot that she signed my book. And here we go. Chapter 1. We stay, we starve, my father says. Baba's tone is as firm as my grip on my mother, I's wrist. Baba, you want us to move to Mumbai? I ask. I feel giddy with excitement and fright, as if I've climbed to the very top of a coconut tree. Yes, Gopal. I's forehead wrinkles, making lines in her large red bindi. We can't leave our Desh, the land of our forefathers, she whispers. I feel the opposite pulls of I's worry about moving and Baba's fear of staying. I envy the twins Sita and Naren, who are outside with their friends without a care in the world. They're just 6 years old and too young to understand everything. I'm 11, and for the last 3 years, Baba and I have told me about our troubles. Baba rolls his eyes. In the village, all we will have is this mud wall and a palm frond roof home. In the city, his eyes rest on I's round face and his expression softens. We have lost our farm, and we will never get it back. There is so much work available in the city, and it pays well, he pleads. We won't go hungry there. I turns away from Baba and nervously wraps the end of her sari around one finger. It will be so lonely without our family and friends. I've never seen I so scared. I put my arm around her. Don't worry, we will all be together. She shakes her head. The city is filled with people. Baba's impatience sharpens. Surely we will become friends with some of them. He takes a deep breath. If it weren't for the moneylender, I'd go by myself to Mumbai, but I can't leave you behind. He will come after you. Baba turns around and looks out the window. I is silent. Baba is right. If he left, the moneylender would harass I and might force me to work for him. Besides, I, Naren, and Sita and I would miss Baba so much. It is better for us to be together. Unlike I don't think of Mumbai as a monster, and I'm not afraid to go there. One of my friends, Mohan, visited the city last year. He says that the city is the home of film stars, cloud-reaching buildings, markets that are bigger than our village, mirror shiny cars, double-decker buses, and dozens of languages. It would be so exciting to see all the things that are in the store windows, to watch people, and to learn different tongues. He even taught me a couple of new words they use in the city. One is Kajur, which means stupid, and the other one is Bindus, which means carefree. Like many other villagers, we have lost our lands and can't grow crops. But there are no other jobs in the village, and there are in the cities. And we're poor as the pipple tree in the bare of autumn. In the past few months, the hunger has settled permanently in our stomachs. When we still had our land, we grew onions, bara and onions on it. I love bara bread with freshly dug onions dipped in salt and pepper. When I made spinach and potatoes or spicy fish with rice, we had a feast, and there was always something growing around in the woods, like the sweet gorse chinch mangoes or guavas I picked. Baba always worked hard and paid the bills on time, but it all changed in the year of good rain 2 monsoons ago, when everyone had a bumper crop of onions. The price of onions tumbled, and Baba couldn't pay back the money he had borrowed to buy the seeds and the fertilizer. Last year, besides working on the farm, Baba worked at a quarry splitting stones, and I carried luggage for tourists at the nearby hill station of Metherten. But after we paid the interest on our debt, there was barely enough left to keep 5 bellies full. Then Narn came down with a cold. I had to stay home to look after him, and for a week she gave him warm milk with turmeric and tea with ginger, but his cold turned into a nasty cough and a high fever, and we had to take him to a doctor. The doctor's visits and the medicine were expensive. The pills were a quarter the size of the gorse chinchseed, but they cost Baba almost 1 month's income. We had to borrow more money, and at the end of last year, Baba sold the farm to pay the lender. We all cried the day we sold our farm, even Baba did. He didn't speak a word for a week. And yet selling the land has done no good because the debt keeps multiplying, and now there is no farm to feed us. The debt is like hunger in our bellies. The interest we pay is like the food we eat, just enough to get by. The debt and the hunger never leave. Baba moves away from the window and breaks the silence. He stands in front of I. I will find work as soon as we get there. You can do the same. Think of our children. Do you want them to rot here? But our village, He cuts her off. With or without us, the village will still be here. We will visit, I say. I twist the end of her sari around her finger tightly. It might take a long time. Baba rolls his eyes and points to the ground. Why do you want to come back anyway? There's nothing here but lumpy soil and clumpy roots. Even when the harvest is good, it harms us. Mumbai is a place for us. They call it Mahanagari, Grand City, for a reason. Does Baba never want to return to the village? I ball up my hands and fists at his words to hide my sadness and anger. Don't forget, it is called Mavayati Nagari, make-believe city too, I says. Baba paces back and forth in our small mud-walled home. In one corner is our kitchen with the wood-burning clay stove, pots, and dishes. In another corner, we keep our set of clothes folded neatly in a sack on top of a cardboard box. We sleep in the far corner where our blankets are piled. I see Baba's hands clasped together behind his back. They are red and raw and scabby. His hands were rough but healthy when he only worked on the farm, but the hard work of splitting stones in the quarry has given him a hunched back and worn-out fingers. He puts a blistered palm on my hand. Sit down. I let go of Ai's hand and sit on a mat on the floor, and she sits next to me. Baba kneels down. Listen to me, both of you. The mat is unraveling at the edges, and I pick thread and tug at it. It frays a bit more. Baba holds Ai's gaze. As long as we stay here, there is no way we can pay our debt. I want to get out of here. Without paying? Ai's voice is shrill. We've been paying off our debt for almost 2 years, and yet we owe more than ever. When I saw the moneylender last time, he said, bring your son with you. He can work and help you pay off the debt. Do you know what that means? He will have Gopal by the throat for who knows how long. Gopal is smart, and we must send him to school so he has a future. I don't want my son's lungs filled with dust and his life to be wasted like that. I will not allow it. Now I know why Baba's breathing is so labored at night, heavy and gasping. Without paying? Ai's voice is shrill. We've been paying off debt for almost 2 years, and yet we owe more than ever. When I saw the moneylender last time, he said, bring your son with you. He can work and help you pay off the debt. Do you know what that means? He will have Gopal by the throat for who knows how long. Gopal is smart, and we must send him to school so he has a future. I do not want my son's lungs filled with dust and his life to be wasted like that. I won't allow it. Now I know why Baba's breathing is so labored at night, heavy and gasping. Baba, but how? It is shameful and wrong to go without paying the money we have borrowed, but we have paid the moneylender many times over. If we stay here, he will own us. I see no other way out. Baba stares at the floor. Tear rolls down I's cheek. Baba wipes it away with a fingertip. I reaches to me, and before I know it, I am enveloped in the folds of her sari. It has gone through many washes, and it is soft, and it smells of I. She extends her other hand to Baba. If there is no other way, then we will go. But I will miss. A sob soaks the rest of her sentence. Baba and I hold her tight. When do we leave, Baba? I ask. Tomorrow, before the sunrise, quickly and quietly. And don't tell a soul. I's eyes are wide. So soon? We don't have money to buy the tickets for Mumbai. We do. I and I look at each other. We know who gave Baba the money. Only a few weeks ago, Jama, I's brother, showed up wearing new clothes, shiny leather sandals, and a wristwatch. He bought a blue marble with white and navy swirls for Naran and red plastic hair clip for Sita. Then Jama slipped his hands in his cotton bag and pulled out a notebook and a slim pencil for me. On the cover of the notebook in gold letters, Shri Tools Inc. was printed. That's where I work, Jama said. That evening he tried to convince I and Baba to move, saying, I work hard in Mumbai, but I don't have to toil until my bones ache. Besides, the children will get a much better education there. You can stay with me. Baba wanted to go, but I refused. Later, Baba and Jama must have talked alone and made plans. Did Jama give you the fare money? I asked Baba to make sure. Yes. How will we find his home? Baba takes out a piece of paper from his pocket and hands it to me. Gopal, this is Jama's address. He told me if we get off at Dadar, it is a short walk from there. Any of the shopkeepers will help us. I starts to make roti for our trip while Baba goes to the market for jute sacks. I sit cross-legged in front of I, and I tell her to feel in front of I to tell her I feel as sad as she is about leaving my friends and our village. I want to promise her I will work hard and study and bring her back for a visit. But before I open my mouth, Sita and Naran saunter in. What are you making, I? Naran asks. Sita rolls her eyes. She has picked that up from Baba. Can't you tell it is roti? When she comes closer, her eyes widen in surprise. So many! My chance to talk to I is ruined because I don't want the twins to find out we are leaving. They will run out and tell their friends. I get up to leave. Mijato, I tell I as I grab the notebook Jama gave me. Samhalan ja. I tells me to be careful, which means she knows I'm going to my favorite spot. Ho, I reply. Where are you going? Can we come? Naran shouts. But I'm out the door and don't look back. Without thinking, I start walking toward the home of my friends Mohan and Shiva. I do want to talk to them one last time before we leave, but Baba said not to tell a soul about our move. Can I do that? Once I speak to Mohan and Shiva, they will know from my voice that I am hiding something. If they ask me questions, I won't be able to keep our secret. It is better to avoid them. I turn around and walk in the opposite direction to the edge of the pond. I stop by the gorse-cinched tree. There are some fruits left, so I pick a handful of pods and settle on the limb of a nearby nimba tree that arches over the pond. The light shines through the leaves onto my notebook. The shadowy sunshine is cool, and I have a view of the world through the curtains of lacy leaves, but the world can't see me. I thinks it is dangerous to sit on a branch above water, but I can't stay away from it. Sitting here, I used to dream of being a king, a pirate, a pilot, a cricket player, and even a magician. Every year when the branches were crowded with small, white, fragrant flowers, I would pretend to be the Mogul king Akbar, sitting in my garden that extended all the way beyond the pond and into the woods. I haven't dreamed like that in a long, long time. Now I come here to think about how to get rid of our troubles, to get away from Naran and Sita, to write in my notebook about my plans, to watch the birds, the trees, the pond. Today, swollen green beads of nimba fruits have replaced the flowers. In a couple of months, they will be bigger and ripe. I open my notebook on my lap and flip pages. On one page I have written, What can I be today? An innocent man who is ordered never to return to his land and sneaks back in disguised as a magician? Underneath is a picture of a bearded magician dressed in a flowing robe. Even though it is a pencil drawing, I know the beard is silver and the robe is red. I turn the page. There's a story about a boy who loves stories and opens up a bookstore so he can read all the books he wants to. The store is small, but he has a line of customers that extends all the way out into the street. Suddenly, a flock of parrots fly above the pond, making a ruckus. I realize I have not written a single story about my village, friends, and neighbors, about my life. So I hold my pencil between my thumb and middle finger and find a blank page. Furiously, I write. I describe not only the tree, pond, and birds, but also the clumpy soil, the fluffy clouds moseying along, and the meandering path into the woods. I draw Mohan with his crooked smile and Shiva throwing a stone because his stones always travel farther than mine. On another page, I write how one day walking home from school, I fell and skinned my knee. I was 6 years old and started to cry. Mohan stayed with me, and Shiva ran ahead to tell I. She came rushing and carried me home. I scribbled out Mohan's and Shiva's family, our school, and my teacher, Mr. Advale, who thinks I am smart, and about the horses and the tourists I have met in the summer. I write about all the fun Mohan and Shiva and I have had, though we worked all day carrying luggage for the tourists. As we climbed the Matharan hill and the sun floated up from a misty horizon like a red balloon. Sometimes we rode horses, and we always chased monkeys. When we watched a swift flutter its wings, take off from a hill and soar above us, it made us happy. I hope next summer maybe I and the twins and I can come back to the village. Then, like the last 2 years, Mohan, Shiva, and I can work in the Matharan together. I know that unless we pay off our debt, we can't return. And once more, sadness washes over me. When I look up, I realize more time has gone by than I thought. Also, I have a kink in my neck. There's so much more to write, and there's no way I can put it all down. Frantically, I write some more. I won't be here to eat the fleshy yellow fruit of the nimba. Will they have gora cinch in Mumbai? I will miss these trees, these leaves, this pond, sounds, soil. Tears trickle down my cheek. I wish I had a camera like the tourists in Matharan. I would take pictures of the nimba tree, our home, Mohan and Shiva, and the hills that surround our village. I wish I had colors and brushes. I would paint the forest and the pond and the birds. Unlike regular cinch, which is sour and strong, gora cinch is sweet and mild. I bite the pink pods and suck on the fleshy part until I am down to the pebbly seed. I spit it out and it plops in the water, sending up a tiny spray. Soon the water in the pond stills. As I eat the last gore cinch, my heart feels the same as my mouth, sour and sweet at the thought of leaving our village. School has just started, and my friends will wonder where I am. I've sat on the nimba branch for a long time. An evening has fallen softly between the branches. The chirping of the birds has vanished, but the light of the moon shines through the leaves of the nimba. Even though I want to write more, it is time to go home. I close my notebook and sit for a few more seconds. When I climb down, I go as slowly as I can because this is the last time I will do that. I want the bark to imprint on my palms just as it has imprinted on my heart. The pond shimmers with moonlight. I look up. The sky is clear and the stars are packed together like people crowded in the temple courtyard at festival time. I stand on the edge of the pond, sucking on the last black seed of the gora cinch. I'm ashamed that we have to leave in secrecy without paying off our debt. It's not right. Baba knows that too, but he doesn't want to split stones in the quarry like he does. I don't either. In Mumbai, I can get a good job after high school, and I won't have to starve. Still, not paying the debt bothers me. The interest may be high, but we did borrow money, and we must repay it. It is Baba's debt, but if I do well in the city, I will return with the money, with interest. That is the only right thing to do. The bright moon lights the path. I take the long way back, passing the homes of my friends Mohan and Shiva. Even though Baba didn't want me to, maybe I should see them and say goodbye. I think of Shiva's Baba, who killed himself last year because he couldn't pay his debt. Like Baba, he was an onion farmer. If we stayed, Baba might do the same. The thought of life without Baba sends shivers through my heart. We must go. Someday we will return to the village, and I will see my friends again. I keep on walking. If you want to find out what happens to Gopal and his family once they arrive in Mumbai and all of the other very suspenseful things that happen in the story, you're going to want to pick up a copy of Boys Without Names by Kashmir Sheth from your school library, maybe from your favorite local indie bookstore. If you can't find it those places, you can always grab it via the link in the description box. But now let's go chat with Kashmira, the author. All right, readers, here we are. We're in for a real treat today. We get a chance to talk to the author, Kashmira Sheth. Kashmira, thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure, Amanda. Thank you for inviting me.
You're welcome. Okay, so I've got 5 questions for you. And the first one is that in your bio, you shared that you moved from a very tropical location to the United States and lived in the Midwest for several decades, a long time. And so I'm wondering if you can tell us, what was it like for you to move to a place that was so vastly different from where you had grown up?
Yes, so that was a big shock. I moved from a tropical climate, and also from a big city. I lived in Mumbai before that, to Ames, Iowa, to attend college. So middle of the cornfield, and it was quite different. Of course, I came, you know, end of July, August, and it was warm. And I know people had said it would be cold, but I had no idea. I mean, it was a jolt to my system. One day in September, the temperature dropped 15 degrees um, in like an hour, and then 40 by the time I finished one of my classes and went out. And I was just, I just couldn't even imagine that kind of cold. I guess it's just hard. You have to experience those things, hot or cold. You can't think.
Mm-hmm.
And then the winter really set in, and the sunnier it was, the colder it was. So bright and sunny, and it was colder. And then the wind, and so it was quite a change. And then walking on a snowy, icy path was something. It was a learning curve that's not always easy, and it took me a while. And of course, none of my shoes that I brought from India worked, so I had to buy something new for
Yeah,
the weather.
probably needed an entire new wardrobe, coats and boots and
Yes,
yes.
and warm, yeah, layered clothes and all that. My things were really thin and cottony, and I just didn't have that with me,
Yeah,
ever.
it's interesting how like our different life experiences prepare us differently for, or leave us completely unprepared. So, um, yeah, so kind of along those lines, you have had multiple careers before you became a writer. And so I'm curious if you could tell us a little bit about what those jobs were and maybe how they prepared you for being a writer, even though you weren't intentionally preparing yourself for being a writer. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So, well, I think some of the things that I did, collect bugs in the summer, or worked in a bakery. They were shorter summer jobs. But two things that I did in my life that was, of course, a lot longer. One was I was trained as a microbiologist, and I worked in my field. And as I think about, science and writing fiction, seems like far apart, and yet in some ways, they are kind of similar in a strange way. Like scientists, you have to have a logic, you have to have a problem,
Hmm.
um, and problem solving, and you have to have research, and you have to have your method and deduction, after you do it. All that is somehow kind of related to writing. You have your character, then they have a problem, then you go about problem solving, but you may have to do research. Depending on what kind of book you're writing, you may have to dig in your memory or your own experiences, or go out in the wider world and do some research. And then you have to have some kind of method and deduction, because suppose in Boys Without Name, if he was from a different kind of world, his whole journey would be a little bit different than what his background was. I mean, I always ask that question, especially when I started writing this thing. This book is why was Gopal different? I had to have a reason that why was he able to pull all these people together, all these children, and not somebody else. And so you have all those things, and I think that kind of helped me think about writing in a different way, but in certain ways it's the same process.
Yeah.
Other thing I did for a longer period of time was teach dancing to young children, and most of my students had Indian background or Indian heritage, and my two daughters were also students. And I think when I was surrounded by them, I realized that how much I enjoyed, working with children, doing
Mhm.
things with them. And I also was amazed how much it kind of empowered them, learning about their heritage through dance, because, dance told stories. And it had such a positive impact on them that after I finished teaching dancing, I started thinking, how can I connect with kids, maybe on a wider level? And then I remember when I was young, all the books that made such a big difference in my life. And I thought, well, that's one different way to kind of reach out to them. And of course, I thoroughly enjoyed reading books with my children. Um, so that was also very helpful. So I
I
began to study
love
writing.
that. Because, people, like you said, don't necessarily associate science or dance with stories or writing. And yet the explanation you gave, it makes so much sense how those two seemingly random things led you into this new career. I love that.
Okay, thank you.
This story is fiction, but the things that happen to the characters in the story are things that happen to kids in real life. And so I'm
Mhm.
curious how true things influence this work of fiction.
So I was able to go to India before I started writing this story. And I talked to a lot of people. I have it in my author notes, some of the social workers that helped me. But also during my travel, I kept my eyes and ears open. We went to this hill station, and there were domestic, helper, or actually another hotel, and their stories and how much they worked hard, and what kind of dreams they had for their children. This one person who was uh, giving horseback rides, he said that his daughter was so smart and everybody wanted um, her to get married, but he said, no, I want her to get education. And so I kind of took those things from those people and thought, this boy could be with a family who wants him to study, to go to school, rather than, get in the same cycle of working early and get that. And so a lot of time, when you travel, you see and absorb things that I didn't even realize that I would use it in my writing, but I did. And then when I was writing it, I was just wondering how these kids would be housed, where nobody would know about them. And I was in Argentina, and they were showing with my daughter and from her law school trip, and they were showing this things where attic they had built and kept the prisoners there, so nobody knew. There was a high school next door, but they had no idea. And I thought that kind of gave me the idea of having a little, attic built, and we visited that. And so, different things. So something that taken from totally different continent and different experience, but I was able to bring those in because I wanted to make it, of course, like I said, in science, you have the truth, the facts. In fiction, you still need to have something that is real. Otherwise,
Yeah.
the story just doesn't work, even in fantasy, right? So,
Yeah. It's kind of like a scavenger hunt, right? Like of your memories and experiences.
right, right. So,
So not all of the things in this book are happy things. There's a lot of hard things, a lot of sad things. And when we talk about books, oftentimes the concept of windows and mirrors are used in the fact that we can see into a world that we might not experience in our real lives, and therefore open our eyes to different ways of living. Um, why do you think it's important for, especially in this case, kids, because this is a book for middle graders, to read about places that are unfamiliar to them, or maybe even to read about hard things, um, even if they don't see those things in their own life? What do you think the value is in that?
So I think as you read books, and especially when you're a child, you really get engrossed in it, and you feel like uh, you are living that life, whatever it is, whatever the story is about. And I think that when you read something like this, something that is fortunately not happening to everybody, to at least to my readers, um, and a lot of kids. I hope it never happens to anybody, but it does happen. And so as they are reading stories, that it not only informs them, but I feel like it creates the emotions in them. They almost feel like they are walking in that shoes. And I think reading about Gopal or Sahil or GC, I'm hoping that they are stirred by it, and they can admire their emotions and hardships and resilience and hope, and also create empathy, that just like Gopal has a lot of empathy, I hope the kids, my readers, will have a lot of empathy for these characters. And so in the end, I feel like, you realize no matter how different they may seem, how different their lives may seem, we all have same kind of needs for, need for love or security, friendship, stability, just food in our belly, laughter, stories.
Yeah. Well, that last word you said is an excellent segue into my last question. I said it at the beginning of this video, in the part I recorded before you were here, and then I mentioned it to you in the email I sent you too, that my favorite quote of all time from any book comes from this story that you wrote. And the quote is that stories are my best friends because they never leave me. No wonder I created a YouTube channel around books, right? But I'm curious if that's a lesson that you learned in your own life.
Absolutely. Absolutely. After I lost my grandparents and my dad, the stories that told me, kind of helped me. And I felt like I could, some of the incidents they told me, I weave in some of my stories, and I feel like they are there, they're alive, that I still have that memories that I can pour it into something else, into my writing. And my mom is always telling me stories, and it's a wonderful way. I think that stories never leave you, that they are there. They weave in your heart, the stories you hear or read, and they stay. So yes, they never leave you, and you can go back and just kind of remember those stories.
Yes, that's wonderful. Wonderful, and I agree 100%. And even just hearing you talk about it, like, and the joy that's on your face, like I can feel that all the way over here. So thank you so much for sharing your stories with us, and for this time answering our questions. If you could real quick tell us, are you working on anything new right now, or do you have any new books coming out? And then also, if a reader has another question, where might be the best way for them to get a hold of you?
Okay. So I just finished chapter book series. There are 6 chapter books in them, 9, called Nina Soni. And I have a middle grade novel coming out next year. Will be out in summer. It's called I'm From Here Too. It's about a Sikh American boy who is bullied in school, and how his family and friends and his faith helps him, come over that. And it's written in verse, so I'm looking forward to it. My first story in verse. So and awesome. They can contact me at I think on my website there is my address, email address. So
wonderful. I will link that before, and I can attest that it works because that's how I got a hold of you. So I know that she'll get your question if you send it there. So all right, readers, thank you so much for joining us today for this First Chapter Friday and author interview. We hope to see you again next time. Happy reading. To continue reading Boys Without Names by Kashmir Sheth, pick up a copy from your school library, purchase one from your favorite local indie bookstore, or grab it via the link in the description box. Then be sure to check out the rest of the First Chapter Friday playlist. I have over 145 middle grade and young adult novels waiting for you to check out. This week's mystery manuscript quote says, "Stories make the best friends because they never leave you." Thanks so much for visiting my channel, Learning with the Word Nerd. I hope you enjoyed the story and you'll come back for more each week. You can find me at these great places online, and I'll see you again next time. Happy reading!